Check out more economic wit at swifteconomics.com.
Back with presidential candidate Dr. Ron Paul. One of the places that I think you and I agree on probably the most is economy and our government spending. We're spending ourselves right back to 1929, if we're lucky, I believe. And boy, there's some just bad things that are popping up that nobody seems to want to look at. 70% of the real gross domestic product in our country, 70% is just from people spending money. How did we get to this point? And more importantly, as president of the United States, what would you do to get us out of it?
Well, we have to stop the spending. We have to bring our budget under control. We can't raise taxes to cut the deficit. We have to cut spending. Of course, where I want to cut spending might not be where you would like to have cut spending, but I want to cut the spending overseas. I don't think we can maintain our empire and we can get control of our budget, mainly for political reasons as much as anything else, because you can't go after health care here in this country and say you're going to balance the budget. But we have to take the pressure off the Fed to create money. You know, we spend and then we tax and then we borrow and we still don't have enough money. So we have this ridiculous monetary system where we go to the Federal Reserve and say, buy these treasury bills, and they buy the treasury bills with money out of the clear blue, out of thin air, and this is causing the inflation. The cost of living for our retired people now are going up probably 10% a year, and they're getting cost of living increases at 2%. This is why so many people are unhappy. So we have to deal with the budget. To me, it is the most critical thing, and if we don't, we're going to have a financial crisis and a dollar collapse. It's going to be a lot worse than it was in 1979, 1980, when we saved the dollar with interest rates of 21%.
Okay, hang on. You say that you want to cut it in foreign spending, and we're going to get to that here in just a little bit. But you know, and I know, in the last 4 years, we had a real deficit of $26 trillion. I'm a little loose on the numbers, but it was about $26 trillion just in Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and I think the railroad union or retirement fund. Right. And now, just in 4 years, just because of interest and everything else we're piling on top, now that real deficit is $46 trillion. Did I hear you right that you would not take that on?
Oh, no, we have to, and those are future obligations. What I was talking about was tomorrow's budget. We have to immediately change the tone of it so that we don't have these huge deficit and we continue to increase it. But, you know, the Republicans were elected to do something about that, so what did we do? We passed doubling the size of the Department of Education and had prescription drug programs, increased these entitlements, and they can't be paid. And this is why the young people are frightened by what's happening. I think it's one of the reasons the young people are coming to our campaign is that I want them to get out of the system. I want them to get out of Social Security if they want, and I want us to live within our means and cut back. But we need to cut these domestic programs. Ronald Reagan, you recall when he ran on to getting rid of the Department of Education. You know, I still believe that we should do that. I don't think it helps education, spends all this money. But we have to do something or we will have a crisis.
You say you want to cut all of these things, you want people out, and so do I. You want to go back to more of a libertarian kind of life, and that's really where we started. We were libertarians at the beginning, but I have to tell you, sir, if you read the Founding Fathers' words, and I know you do, they said you got to be a religious and moral people. Well, we're, generally speaking, not necessarily a religious and moral people. There are people that will not do for themselves. How do you finally say to people, you know what? You don't have a right to health care. You don't have a right to all of these things that we've given. Bloomberg just today is starting to pay people for showing up to go to free school. How do you get off that?
Well, I think you just deny them the benefits, and we will be denying the benefits when we run out of money and the system collapses. All I want to do is make sure we start before we have the financial crisis. But we are an immoral nation, but the immorality is through our government. Bastiat, when he wrote the law, he made this very clearly. The point, he says, if you and I can't steal from our neighbors, we don't have the moral right to ask our government to do the same thing. So it is the moral aspect of the law. And we have become an immoral nation because because we think that if you transfer wealth through the government force, that it's legitimate, it's an entitlement, and they have a right to it. And as long as we have that, no, there's no way, you and I would probably agree with that, there's no way we can solve our problems. But if you feed the system and allow people to get these benefits and perpetuate the welfare state, it never will reverse. So I say, let's start reversing it and start cutting the spending.
Back in a second with presidential candidate Ron Paul.